Welcome back to A One Storyteller, where we bring you the most compelling and thought-provoking narratives that challenge our understanding of justice and human nature. Today's story takes us deep into the heart of a courtroom drama that shook the foundations of privilege and prejudice in modern society. It's a tale that begins with an arrogant billionaire whose wealth had always shielded him from consequences, until he encountered a black judge who would change everything. In the bustling city of New York, where skyscrapers pierce the clouds and fortunes are made and lost daily, lived Charles Whitmore III, a self-made tech magnate whose net worth exceeded $20 billion. Known throughout the business world for his ruthless efficiency and cutthroat tactics, Whitmore had built his empire on the backs of countless employees and competitors crushed beneath his ambition. His success had bred an arrogance that knew no bounds, transforming him into a man who believed himself above all laws, both written and unwritten. The story begins on a crisp autumn morning when Whitmore found himself in court facing charges of embezzlement and fraud. These charges stemmed from years of unethical business practices that had finally caught up with him. Yet as he entered the courtroom dressed in a custom-tailored suit worth more than most people's annual salaries, he carried himself with the same air of superiority that had defined his rise to power. His legal team, comprised of the best attorneys money could buy, assured him this would be nothing more than a minor inconvenience in his otherwise charmed life. What Whitmore didn't anticipate was the presence of Judge Evelyn Thompson, a trailblazing jurist who had risen through the ranks despite facing countless obstacles due to her race and gender. Appointed to the bench through sheer merit and determination, Judge Thompson had earned a reputation for her unwavering commitment to justice and equality. Her courtroom was known for its strict adherence to decorum and respect, qualities that would soon clash dramatically with Whitmore's entitled demeanor. As the proceedings began, the tension between these two formidable figures became immediately apparent. Whitmore's refusal to acknowledge basic courtroom etiquette, particularly his deliberate decision to remain seated when Judge Thompson entered, set the stage for a confrontation that would transcend mere legal proceedings. This seemingly small act of defiance would trigger a chain reaction of events that neither party could have predicted, ultimately leading to a verdict that would send shockwaves through the entire nation. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Thompson took her seat, her eyes scanning the room with practiced authority. Charles Whitmore sat slouched in his chair, his expensive leather shoes resting casually on the table before him. When the bailiff called for everyone to rise, Whitmore remained seated, his lips curling into a smirk as he deliberately avoided making eye contact with the judge. The audacity of his actions rippled through the gallery, causing several spectators to gasp audibly while others exchanged disbelieving glances. Judge Thompson's expression remained composed, though those familiar with her work could detect the subtle tightening of her jaw. "Mr. Whitmore," she began, her voice carrying the weight of authority, tempered by years of judicial experience, "I believe you understand the proper protocol when a judge enters the courtroom." Her words hung in the air, demanding acknowledgement. Instead of responding, Whitmore leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defiantly across his chest. His body language screamed entitlement, as if daring anyone to challenge his behavior. The tension escalated when Whitmore finally spoke, his voice dripping with condescension. "Your Honor," he drawled, emphasizing the title with mocking inflection, "I've paid my dues to this system many times over. I don't see why I should stand for anyone, especially not someone who probably got their position through affirmative action." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, some shocked by his brazenness, while others nodded in agreement, revealing the deep-seated prejudices still present in society. Judge Thompson's response came measured but firm. "This courtroom represents the principles of justice and equality upon which our legal system is founded. Respect is not given based on personal opinions or biases, but rather it is earned through one's commitment to uphold the law." She paused, allowing her words to settle before continuing. "And let me assure you, Mr. Whitmore, my position was earned through years of dedication, hard work, and an unyielding pursuit of fairness, qualities that seem foreign to your privileged existence." Whitmore's lawyer attempted to intervene, whispering urgently into his client's ear, but the billionaire waved him off dismissively. "Save your breath, counselor. I know how these things work. Money talks louder than any gavel." His statement drew another round of murmurs from the gallery, this time mixed with nervous laughter from those who recognized the truth in his words about the influence of wealth in the justice system. The confrontation reached its peak when Judge Thompson stood, her presence commanding absolute attention. "Mr. Whitmore, your wealth may have bought you influence and power in boardrooms, but here, in this courtroom, we operate under different rules. Rules that demand respect, integrity, and accountability. Your continued disrespect will not be tolerated." She then addressed the court officer. "Bailiff, please ensure that Mr. Whitmore understands the gravity of his actions. Should he choose to persist in his current behavior, we will address contempt of court immediately." The atmosphere grew thick with anticipation as Whitmore finally rose from his seat, though his movements were deliberately slow and exaggerated. His eyes locked with Judge Thompson's, each trying to assert dominance through sheer force of will. The billionaire's face twisted into a sneer as he muttered, just loud enough for the microphone to pick up, "We'll see who has the last laugh here." The comment sent another wave of tension through the room, with several jurors visibly uncomfortable at the escalating conflict. What made this confrontation particularly shocking wasn't just Whitmore's blatant disregard for courtroom decorum, but the way it exposed the underlying currents of privilege and prejudice that still permeated the justice system. Veteran court reporters noted how rarely they had witnessed such open defiance in a high-profile case, especially against a judge of color. The media representatives present quickly realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. A moment where the facade of civility in the justice system was stripped away, revealing the raw power dynamics at play. As the initial exchange concluded, Judge Thompson maintained her composure, though her eyes betrayed a steely determination. "Proceedings will continue as scheduled," she announced, her voice cutting through the lingering tension like a blade. "However, let this serve as notice to all parties involved that respect for this court and its officers is non-negotiable." The warning hung in the air, setting the stage for what promised to be an unprecedented legal battle where personal prejudices would collide with the principles of justice in ways no one could have anticipated. The courtroom proceedings continued amidst an electric atmosphere charged with unresolved tension. As the prosecution presented its case, detailing Whitmore's elaborate schemes of embezzlement and fraud, the billionaire's behavior remained provocatively dismissive. During witness testimonies, he openly scrolled through his phone, occasionally chuckling at messages while victims of his financial crimes recounted their stories of ruin. His security detail, positioned strategically around the courtroom, maintained a visible presence that seemed more threatening than protective. Judge Thompson's patience wore thin as Whitmore's defense team employed increasingly aggressive tactics. They filed numerous objections, each more theatrical than the last, attempting to disrupt the flow of evidence presentation. When a key witness, a former employee who had blown the whistle on Whitmore's illegal activities, took the stand, the billionaire's lawyer launched into a character assassination so vicious that even seasoned court observers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The witness, visibly shaken, struggled to maintain composure under the relentless attack. Throughout these exchanges, Judge Thompson maintained her poise, ruling with precision and fairness. However, her growing frustration became evident in the tightening of her pen strokes against her legal pad and the brief pauses before delivering her decisions. The turning point came during the cross-examination of a forensic accountant, when Whitmore suddenly interrupted, "Your Honor, do we really need to waste time listening to this nonsense? We all know how these things work, guilty until proven rich." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, with several jurors exchanging concerned glances. The judge's response was immediate and forceful. "Mr. Whitmore, your attempts to undermine the integrity of these proceedings will not be tolerated. If you cannot conduct yourself appropriately, I will have you removed from my courtroom." Her words silenced the room, but Whitmore merely smiled, clearly enjoying the attention. His confidence seemed unshakable, bolstered by years of experience manipulating legal systems to his advantage. Reporters in the press gallery feverishly documented every interaction, sensing the makings of a landmark case. As the trial progressed, patterns emerged that painted a disturbing picture of systemic privilege. Whitmore's defense repeatedly cited technicalities and procedural errors, strategies that had historically favored wealthy defendants. Yet Judge Thompson remained steadfast, systematically dismantling each argument with meticulous attention to legal precedent and constitutional rights. Her rulings demonstrated a deep understanding of both the letter and spirit of the law, forcing Whitmore's team to adapt their approach continually. The media coverage intensified, with national news outlets picking up the story. Social media platforms buzzed with debates about wealth inequality and racial bias in the justice system. Hashtags related to the trial trended worldwide, drawing attention to similar cases where powerful individuals had escaped accountability. The public's fascination grew as details emerged about Whitmore's past legal battles, all of which he had successfully navigated through settlements and plea deals that barely scratched his fortune. Inside the courtroom, the psychological warfare between Whitmore and Judge Thompson reached new heights. During recesses, Whitmore could be seen chatting amiably with reporters, painting himself as a victim of political correctness run amok. Meanwhile, Judge Thompson worked tirelessly behind closed doors, reviewing case files and consulting with legal experts to ensure her decisions would withstand appellate scrutiny. Her chambers became a fortress of preparation, with stacks of legal briefs and highlighted statutes covering every available surface. The tension reached a boiling point when the prosecution introduced evidence of Whitmore's involvement in offshore accounts specifically designed to evade taxes. As damning documents were projected onto screens throughout the courtroom, Whitmore's smug expression faltered for the first time. His defense team scrambled to respond, filing emergency motions and requesting continuances. Judge Thompson denied each request, her rulings becoming increasingly pointed in their emphasis on accountability and transparency. What made this trial truly remarkable was how it forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about power dynamics in the justice system. Every day brought new revelations about Whitmore's business practices, from predatory lending schemes targeting minority communities to hostile takeovers that destroyed local economies. The courtroom had transformed into a microcosm of broader societal issues, with each development resonating far beyond the confines of the legal proceedings. As the trial entered its final stages, the atmosphere grew increasingly charged. Legal analysts speculated about potential outcomes, with many predicting that Whitmore's wealth and connections would once again shield him from meaningful consequences. Yet Judge Thompson's unwavering commitment to justice suggested otherwise. Each day ended with her issuing stern reminders about courtroom decorum and the importance of respecting the legal process, warnings that seemed directed as much at society at large as they were at the defendant. The culmination of weeks of intense legal proceedings arrived on a Friday afternoon when Judge Thompson prepared to deliver her verdict. The courtroom, packed beyond capacity, held its collective breath as she began reading her decision. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, thorough examination of legal precedents, and mindful of the principles of justice that guide our legal system, this court finds Charles Whitmore III guilty on all counts of embezzlement, fraud, and tax evasion. A murmur swept through the gallery, but Judge Thompson raised her hand for silence before continuing. The sentence imposed must reflect not only the severity of these crimes, but also serve as a deterrent against similar offenses by those who believe their wealth places them above the law. She paused, looking directly at Whitmore, whose usual arrogance had been replaced by genuine concern. Therefore, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole for the first 10 years. Additionally, you will forfeit 75% of your personal assets to compensate victims and fund community development programs in areas affected by your criminal activities. The courtroom erupted in astonished whispers as journalists scrambled to document the unprecedented ruling. Judge Thompson continued, her voice steady and authoritative. Furthermore, upon release, You will be prohibited from holding any executive position in publicly traded companies for life. Your voting rights in corporate matters will be similarly restricted. She then addressed the broader implications of her decision. This sentence acknowledges that while Mr. Whitmore's crimes were financial in nature, their impact extended far beyond balance sheets. Families were destroyed, communities devastated, and trust in our economic system eroded. Turning to the gallery where many of Whitmore's victims sat, she added, "To those harmed by these actions, know that this court recognizes your suffering and validates your courage in seeking justice. The restitution funds established will provide resources for rebuilding lives and restoring hope." Her words brought tears to several faces, including that of the whistleblower whose testimony had proved crucial to the conviction. Legal experts watching the proceedings noted several groundbreaking aspects of the sentence. First, the forfeiture amount represented one of the largest ever imposed on an individual in a white-collar crime case. Second, the restrictions on future business activities set a new precedent for limiting the influence of convicted corporate criminals. Most significantly, the combination of substantial prison time with severe financial penalties challenged the conventional wisdom that wealthy defendants could always negotiate lenient sentences. As court officers moved to escort Whitmore from the room, he finally showed genuine emotion, his face pale and hands trembling. His legal team immediately began preparing appeals, but Judge Thompson had anticipated this move. In her written opinion, she meticulously documented each aspect of the case, creating an ironclad record that would prove challenging for higher courts to overturn. The decision included detailed analysis of how Whitmore's wealth had been used to perpetuate and conceal his crimes, establishing clear links between his actions and their devastating consequences. The aftermath of the verdict revealed additional layers of significance. Regulatory agencies, emboldened by the court's stance, launched investigations into other prominent figures in Whitmore's business network. Financial institutions that had facilitated his schemes faced scrutiny, leading to widespread reforms in banking regulations. Perhaps most importantly, the case inspired legislative proposals aimed at closing loopholes that had previously allowed wealthy criminals to escape meaningful punishment. As the reality of his situation sank in, Whitmore's empire began to crumble. Major investors withdrew support, board members resigned en masse, and business partners severed ties. The ripple effects extended throughout the corporate world, with executives suddenly becoming more cautious about questionable practices. Companies rushed to implement stricter compliance measures, knowing that Judge Thompson's ruling had fundamentally altered the risk-reward calculation for white-collar crime. The sentencing hearing concluded with Judge Thompson's final remarks, delivered with characteristic poise. Justice is not blind to power or privilege. It demands accountability regardless of status or wealth. Today's decision serves as a reminder that no one is above the law, and that true justice requires more than mere punishment. It demands restoration, reform, and redemption. With these words, she brought down her gavel, sealing a verdict that would resonate through legal circles and corporate boardrooms for generations to come. The reverberations of Judge Thompson's historic ruling spread far beyond the confines of the courtroom, triggering a seismic shift in how society approached issues of wealth, power, and justice. Within days of the verdict, major financial institutions began implementing sweeping reforms, recognizing that the era of unchecked corporate privilege had reached its expiration date. Investment banks revised their client screening processes, incorporating stringent ethical evaluations alongside traditional financial assessments. Private equity firms, once notorious for their opaque operations, voluntarily opened their books to independent auditors, signaling a dramatic departure from past practices. Corporate America experienced what industry analysts termed the Great Reckoning, as executives across various sectors scrambled to distance themselves from controversial business practices. Fortune 500 companies convened emergency board meetings to review their compliance protocols, resulting in the establishment of new ethics committees staffed by independent watchdogs. The business community's response wasn't merely reactive. It represented a fundamental reevaluation of corporate responsibility and social impact. Several prominent CEOs issued public statements supporting Judge Thompson's decision, acknowledging that sustainable success required more than quarterly profits. It demanded moral integrity and social consciousness. The legal profession underwent its own transformation as law schools incorporated the Whitmore case into their curricula, using it as a cornerstone for discussions about ethics in practice. Young attorneys, inspired by Judge Thompson's unwavering commitment to justice, began gravitating toward public service roles, viewing them not as career detours, but as vital contributions to societal progress. Established law firms found themselves under increased pressure to demonstrate their commitment to equal justice, leading to the creation of pro bono initiatives focused on economic crimes and corporate accountability. Perhaps most significantly, the case catalyzed a national conversation about systemic inequality and privilege. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags promoting economic justice, while grassroots organizations reported unprecedented levels of engagement and funding. Community groups that had long fought against predatory business practices found themselves armed with newfound legitimacy and resources. The restitution funds established through Whitmore's sentence became models for restorative justice initiatives, demonstrating how financial penalties could be transformed into tools for community empowerment. In the political arena, the case provided momentum for stalled legislation addressing corporate accountability and wealth inequality. Lawmakers who had previously hesitated to challenge powerful business interests now found themselves backed by overwhelming public support for reform. Bipartisan coalitions formed to draft comprehensive regulatory frameworks, while investigative committees launched probes into other high-profile corporate figures suspected of similar misconduct. The Department of Justice announced the formation of a special task force dedicated to pursuing complex financial crimes, signaling a renewed commitment to holding the wealthy accountable. The media landscape evolved as well, with major outlets expanding their investigative journalism teams focused on corporate malfeasance. Documentaries and television series exploring themes of wealth and power gained popularity, reflecting society's growing appetite for stories that challenged traditional power structures. Educational institutions responded by developing new programs focused on business ethics and social responsibility, ensuring that future generations of leaders would be better equipped to navigate the complex intersection of commerce and morality. On Wall Street, the traditional bastion of unfettered capitalism, changes manifested in unexpected ways. Investment firms began prioritizing environmental, social, and governance criteria in their decision-making processes. Hedge funds that had once thrived on exploiting regulatory gaps found themselves adapting to a new reality where transparency and accountability carried real market value. Even the language of finance evolved, with terms like impact investing and social return on investment entering mainstream business discourse. The cultural impact extended into popular consciousness, influencing everything from literature to entertainment. Artists and writers drew inspiration from the case, producing works that explored themes of justice, privilege, and redemption. The phrase, "no one is above the law," took on new resonance, becoming a rallying cry for various social movements advocating for greater equality and accountability. Educational institutions reported increased interest in courses focusing on ethics and social justice, indicating a generational shift in values and priorities. Perhaps most telling was the change in public discourse surrounding wealth and success. Where once the accumulation of riches had been viewed as the ultimate measure of achievement, society began embracing more nuanced definitions of success that included social responsibility and ethical leadership. Business conferences and seminars increasingly featured panels on corporate citizenship, while award ceremonies began recognizing achievements in social impact alongside traditional business metrics. The ripple effect reached international shores as well, with foreign governments and regulatory bodies taking note of the American example. Global financial centers began revisiting their own regulatory frameworks, recognizing that in an interconnected world, standards of accountability needed to rise collectively. International business forums featured discussions about harmonizing regulations to prevent corporations from exploiting jurisdictional differences, while multilateral organizations proposed new treaties addressing transnational economic crimes. Back in domestic affairs, the case influenced how future judges approached similar trials. Judicial conferences incorporated sessions on maintaining impartiality in high-profile cases involving powerful defendants, while law enforcement agencies developed specialized training programs for investigators handling complex financial crime. The Department of Justice created a database tracking corporate convictions and settlements, providing valuable insights into patterns of misconduct and enabling more effective prevention strategies. As months passed, the initial shock of the verdict gave way to sustained momentum for change. Nonprofit organizations reported increased donations and volunteerism, while corporate social responsibility initiatives gained genuine traction, rather than serving as mere marketing tools. The business community gradually embraced the idea that ethical practices weren't just morally right, but also economically sound, leading to innovations in sustainable business models and socially conscious entrepreneurship. The legacy of Judge Thompson's decision continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Academic institutions established research centers dedicated to studying the intersection of wealth, power, and justice, producing valuable insights that informed policy decisions. Think tanks and advocacy groups collaborated on developing metrics for measuring corporate impact beyond traditional financial indicators, creating new standards for evaluating business success. The case had become more than a legal precedent. It had evolved into a catalyst for comprehensive social and economic transformation. The story of Charles Whitmore's downfall and Judge Evelyn Thompson's landmark ruling stands as a testament to the enduring power of justice in the face of entrenched privilege. What began as a simple courtroom confrontation evolved into a watershed moment that reshaped our understanding of accountability in modern society. Through Judge Thompson's unwavering commitment to principle and her masterful navigation of complex legal waters, we witnessed how true justice transcends mere punishment, becoming instead a force for profound societal change. As viewers of A One Storyteller, you've journeyed with us through this remarkable narrative that challenged conventional wisdom about power and privilege. But our exploration doesn't end here. This story serves as a powerful reminder that every day presents new opportunities to examine and address the inequalities that persist in our world. We invite you to join us in our next episode, where we'll delve into another compelling tale of courage and conviction that continues to shape our understanding of justice in the 21st century. Remember to subscribe to A1 Storyteller for more gripping narratives that illuminate the human condition and inspire meaningful dialogue about the world we share. Your engagement helps us bring these important stories to light, fostering a community committed to truth, accountability, and positive change. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep believing in the transformative power of justice.